Hello and welcome to Pest in Class, expert voices in pest management. Today, I speak with Anders Fredericksen, our Senior Product Marketing Manager here at FieldRoutes, as we take a deep dive into this year's Pest Industry Report. This report is more than just data. It's a window into the experiences of hundreds of business owners sharing their challenges, triumphs, and concerns for the future of the industry. I'm your host, Amanda Salvatore, and we're about to unpack some truly valuable insights. Let's get into it. Anders Fredericksen, you are the Senior Product Marketing Manager here at FieldRoutes, and today you are back on the podcast to discuss the Pest Industry Report for 2025. Thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I'm very excited to get into the findings with you today, but first and foremost, we want to get to know you and hear your answer to the icebreaker. What song absolutely screams summer to you and why?
I have put together some summer playlists recently. So I think right now, like the most summer song I can think of is Stung by the Australian band Pond.
Oh, I don't know them.
Yeah, it's really good. It came out I think last year. And I heard it a few weeks ago recently, and it felt like all of a sudden summer had officially started. I'll give an honorable mention though, real quick, to
please.
The song Carl Sagan by Night Moves, also a great summer song too.
I don't know that song, but I'm a big Carl Sagan fan, so I
might fit.
It might fit. I'll have to check that out. That's so fun. But let's get into these findings. For those who are unfamiliar, though, first and foremost, could you explain the survey and who we are hearing from?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the second year in a row, we partnered with Thrive Analytics this spring to survey over 1,000 U.S. pest control companies, just like we did last year. So we got responses from companies who have under $500,000 revenue, all the way up to the giants that take in over $200 million a year. And we talked to leaders with a variety of titles as well in order to get a really good cross section. The survey also was, it wasn't restricted to what software these companies are using or what pet services they provide. So the whole idea is really to measure the pulse of the industry, see what things are top of mind for these businesses, and see what patterns there are, larger economic trends, how things are impacting the space. So lots of focus on outlook, technology, strategy, things like that.
I'd love to know what are the four main takeaways from this report. I know that it seems like there's these four main things that are on top of mind for everyone in the industry right now.
So the four main takeaways that really jumped out at us from looking at all the data were, number one, we do see some cautious optimism in the market again, but with some growing concerns over recession, plus some pressure and concerns over material costs and availability as well. But overall, still lots of optimism. Second, we did see some of these rising margin pressures that are a real threat, are top of mind for a lot of companies. But what we saw is that there's plenty of good opportunity left in the market to counter these pressures by adopting the right technology. In other words, lots of opportunity to find new efficiencies and kind of counter those pressures with the right tech. Three, we found that a digital first focus continues to grow in the industry, despite some pretty important gaps for a lot of companies. So adoption for tech continues to grow. There's lots of appetite for new tools, but still some big gaps remain. And then finally, we looked at AI and polled people on that technology, and we saw that there is increased interest and a little bit of adoption, but overall the usage still remains pretty low.
All right, so let's get started with the economic outlook, and you said the cautious optimism. Can you elaborate on what the report reveals about people's worries and their hopes for next year? I know we talked a little bit about recession. You mentioned a few little key factors there, but I'd love to dive in deep.
So right off the bat, in terms of optimism, there's plenty of reason to expect that, and there's lots of good results to talk about. So, in terms of market outlook, over a third of respondents said that they expect the market conditions to improve this year, and 23% said it would be worse, but 43% also said things will remain the same. So the vast majority think that things will either be about the same or better, indicating that there still is pretty good stability that people sense. Overall, yeah, that's a good thing. There is some concern about some significant risks. 89% of businesses did report being hit by rising material and equipment costs. So, that means some serious pressure on profitability. And that really also pulls on, plans and emissions for the years. So it's interesting to see how businesses, said that they'll adjust to that strategically. And it'll be interesting to see how it all shapes out. Additionally, there were staffing challenges reported. It was 43% this year listed staffing challenges, one of the biggest risks to meeting goals. And that's a big increase, up from 30% last year. And then in terms of economic conditions, the potential for recession was identified as a risk by 35% of businesses. We also looked at the revenue and overall profit outlook. So 37% of respondents anticipate that the revenue will remain flat, while 31% think it'll increase between 1% and 5%. That kind of seems to mirror the overall economic outlook that we just described. In terms of profit, again, it's slightly more conservative there in terms of outlook. 50% expect their profits to remain the same, which is up from 40% last year, and fewer year over year expect an increase in profits. So it's much more conservative and a little bit cooler on the profit side. And yeah, overall, with these real pressures you mentioned, things like costs, staffing, supply chain issues potentially, things in the survey, well mixed, they still lean slightly positive in terms of outlook. And I think that hints at some really strong resilience in this industry overall.
We're still waiting for a lot of things to land right now. We're kind of in the in-between. So by next year, we'll have a little bit better understanding of how any of these pressures really affected the pest control industry and individual businesses. With the rise of material and equipment costs, like you had mentioned, I know the report discusses an increased focus on how technology can help when it comes to these margin pressures that you mentioned. How are these challenges impacting businesses, and what does the report suggest owners are considering when it comes to technology?
Besides the uncertainties we mentioned, kind of, I think things in a larger scale and the material availability and cost challenges that are, creating profit pressures, there's lots to suggest that in order to protect margins and kind of make up for these risks and challenges, companies are intending to kind of lean on the benefits of technology. So we can get into that a little bit, because it seems that, with the right investment and application, there really are, so many efficiencies, other benefits that solid tech can provide to the business. For example, when respondents were asked about, the most important factors that they look for in a new software solution, the top picks were, number one, an all-in-one management solution, something that's, end-to-end and streamlines operations and ties everything together. Number two was product features and functionality, what it can bring to the table, what's new, what it can do better. And then three, integrations to existing systems. So, does it play well with the rest of the tech stack? Does it fit into a larger plan? And all three of these reasons ranked above price. So to me, that says that the focus is overall more on value and the larger picture versus just prioritizing cost and the cheapest option available. In other words, the majority of buyers know that getting the right tech and systems in place can make a huge difference. So price does factor in, but most of all, they want to get the right fit for their business, and they want to get results versus just settling for what's acceptable and just work so getting through the day. We also asked, what are the top reasons you would consider switching software vendors? And to go along with that, top answers were to, number one, increase operational efficiency; two, to automate, more workflows; three, to increase gross margins; four, scaling the business; and five, because of feature gaps in the current solution. So I think all of that seems to further back up what we're seeing, which is that, a lot of companies see the right tech, getting that in place can be a real counter to these challenges. There's just overall, so much opportunity to add more efficiencies rather, to introduce more automation and improve the bottom line as kind of a counter to some of the things you can't control, like material cost and availability.
Yeah, you have to invest in the business and in the software. Then you get to see how it transforms your business. You get the opportunity to really explore that technology and utilize it and be able to, like you said, scale or grow your business, even though there are some of these marginal pressures happening. I know that there are some gaps, though, that you mentioned earlier. It seems like there is this huge interest in technology, what it can do for the business, but there are these gaps. Can you tell us more about the gaps that you observed, like the lack of software for scheduling and routing, despite there being this desire to utilize technology?
There were a few things that really jumped out at us that we thought were huge surprises. We saw scheduling software adoption increase to 55%, up from 45% the previous year. And while it's great to see that jump, like you mentioned, it's still kind of shocking that, almost half of respondents aren't using software for scheduling purposes. And the same is true for routing, pretty much 52% adoption is what we saw for routing software, which we thought was really surprising. There's so many obvious benefits there. And then lastly, we also saw that only 55% are using an end-to-end business management platform. And obviously from our perspective, it's something that just offers so much value and makes scale really possible and helps you achieve lean growth, so many other things. But still to see kind of low adoption for things that seem to be pretty core to modern operations for pest control companies was really surprising.
Yeah, I know that a lot of companies, when it comes to tech, it seems like the last thing on their mind, or it's really hard to implement, that it would take time away from the business. But it's just creating that foundation so that you can build upon it, really. So I can see where there is that hesitation and why people would be putting it off as much or as long as possible. But also sometimes ripping off the Band-Aid and getting on board is just going to help elevate your business. So I know that the report highlights some significant areas where businesses could potentially save time and reduce costs, and just really eye-opening, especially when it comes to automation. What are some of the most impactful areas where companies can start making changes? I know we talked about routing. I know we talked about scheduling. I feel like those are two very obvious big overhauls for a company. But where else can they find opportunities to reduce costs?
To back up, like there's so much opportunity for many to really embrace digital first focus and to undergo digital transformation and using new technology available to rethink how your business operates, how you interact with customers, what the customer experience looks like, how your business delivers value, just to redesign things and make them, work the best way possible, capture the most value that way. So, a company can say, hey, let's take a step back and see what's out there, what's proven to work. How can we embrace that and build our teams and operations around the best and easiest ways to build demand, close business, schedule teams, deliver service, and just overall create, lasting relationships with their customers. There's so much low-hanging fruit for automation as part of all that. So, again, you mentioned routing and scheduling. I think that software, being used for those purposes, that should be universal at this point, and that all comes with the right all-in-one business management solution. The right end-to-end business management platform brings so much more to the table. You get features and automation for things like communications, tasks, alerts, follow-ups, automated billing features, easy digital payments, so much more. It just helps you keep on top of everything, keeps your teams and operations synced and running smoothly. You get more visibility into the business, get easy, automated reporting. The right platform will allow you to do more with less. It allows you to do things quicker and more easily. Ultimately, this all enables you to scale and run your business more effectively.
I love the idea of automation for billing. I also love automation for communicating with your customers. This is something that you and I have talked about previously. I think that if you are able to automate some of your communications to your customers, it actually frees you up to create more opportunity to have meaningful connection with them. Instead of a call to confirm an appointment, what you can do is use that airtime if you're sending those text messages out to confirm those times and those meetings, right? You have the opportunity and the airtime to make those happy calls instead, and using it to really showcase how you care about the customer and make those connections personal, I think is a great way to show you care and just show this level of interest in how you're doing and how your customers are receiving their services. Finally, I know that AI is on top of everyone's mind right now, and it is the hot topic for 2025. So let's discuss this fourth takeaway. What does the report indicate about the current state of AI adoption, and where do people think AI is going to have its biggest impact?
So this year, 73% reported they're still not using AI today. That is down from 82% last year. So there's been an increase in usage, which is interesting. So far, only 19% said they plan to actually introduce AI into their business this year. Still, there's a lot of growing interest, and in terms of where the industry thinks that AI will have the biggest impact, marketing was the top choice. We're seeing companies kind of dip their toes into the water, while the majority seem to be kind of waiting to see what's proven out to work best so far in terms of AI. So it'll be really interesting to see how that changes next year as well. And I expect a lot of changes year to year as things continue to kind of develop and accelerate and change.
So we've discussed AI, we've discussed the gaps in technology and material costs, we've discussed this economic outlook. I would love to know what surprised you most about this year's report.
I think we have to go back to the fact that only 52% of respondents say they're utilizing software for routing purposes, and only 55% are using software for scheduling purposes. To me, using software to run those operations, with human oversight, obviously, just saves so much time, prevents so many headaches, just makes things so much easier. It should really be, I would say, table stakes at this point and a no-brainer. So, I would encourage, anyone who isn't using it today to start doing that ASAP and, reap all the savings and benefits from that.
Looking back from last year to this year, what are some major differences that you observed between the two reports from 2024 to 2025?
One thing that was interesting to see and good to see was that this idea of digital transformation we talked about, this digital first focus. There was a jump in respondents rating that as very important in terms of goals and priorities. That was 38% last year said it was very important. 44% said it was this year. So it's good to see that it's going up in priority. And then I think the other thing too, I'd say kind of the cooling off of the profit outlook that we covered earlier as well. That was really interesting to see. It'll be really interesting to kind of follow how that goes the rest of the year. And then, going back to AI real quick, there was an increase in companies saying that they see AI as a helpful technology in the next 1 to 3 years. So even if they're not using it now, more companies this year say that they do expect to get value out of it, in the near future. So there's potentially lots more, adoption usage on the horizon.
Anders, why do you think these reports are important? What are we learning, and how is it going to help our customers and beyond to kind of understand what's going on with the industry?
I think, not just for pure reporting purposes, just to see what's happening and kind of cover progress year to year. I think it's really interesting to dive into the data and see patterns in terms of technology adoption and usage, seeing strategic priorities and plans, and see how those kind of adapt over the years. I think for pest control companies, you can use this for personal benchmarking purposes. How do we factor in to this? Are others kind of prioritizing things differently? What are other companies thinking about? What are they looking at in terms of technology? What are they hoping to do? What do they expect in terms of performance? All these things. It's really interesting to kind of see, what's happening, and you can get a lot of really interesting insights you can pull out from, this big group of U.S. companies, and just kind of get a real feel for the health of the industry and also the direction it's going.
I think it's great as an owner to have your pulse on what is happening within the industry and how you can utilize those new technologies or some of the key factors that are seen in the reports. being able to judge the health of your business as well. I think that's awesome. Anders, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. Before we go, I know that I had mentioned opportunities for allowing for some breathing room, using technology so that you can make those happy calls, using technology so you can step away from the computer and your routing and able to work on different aspects of the business that may not be getting the attention that they deserve. As you're looking at this report, where do you think people can really utilize this information?
I think trying to kind of use this as a good personal, benchmark for your business and kind of using it to explore things is a really good start. And I would say to do that, take the results from this and start to compare. And then I know it's, hard to find time day to day with everything going on, but if you can kind of keep a running list of like your challenges, things that you see popping up in your business that you feel like you struggle with or spending too much time on, the real pain points. And if you can kind of keep that list going, then, when it gets to the point that you do have some time to maybe take a broader look at whether new vendors or new solutions out there, you have a really great list to kind of work off of and see how you can kind of solve a lot of these problems with new technology or, by changing things, replacing things, and kind of adopt that important digital first focus to see how, you overall can, improve things and deliver new value technology and save a lot of time and headaches doing so.
Anyone who's listening, we will have the report in our show notes so you could check that out and start utilizing it today. Anders Fredericksen, I am so glad that you were able to come onto the podcast today, and I look forward to hearing about the report for 2026.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.